Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Practitioners Unplugged podcast, where we dive into real world stories and the strategies of manufacturing digital transformation. Join us as we hear from thought leaders and innovators who are driving change and shaping the future of Industry 4.0. Whether you're a senior seasoned professional or just curious about the future of manufacturing, this podcast is for you. Today on episode 4, we have Sudhi Bangalore, a senior executive and thought leader who has innovated, built, and commercialized several successful technology platforms for companies such as Rockwell Automation, Wipro Technologies, and Stanley Black Decker. He is the founder of Full Bore, a manufacturing technology firm that has developed solutions like WinH, a vision-based system that has doubled productivity for numerous companies. As the former CTO of operations at Stanley Black Decker, he led a global transformation over a 3-year period. He has built and led high-performing teams, forged strategic partnerships globally, and pioneered groundbreaking innovations in flexible automation, digital lean tools, and continuous excellence. In his spare time, he serves on advisory boards for UConn School of Engineering, Intel IoT, and the Connecticut Governor's Work Council. He also is a future council leader at the World Economic Forum. Please join me in welcoming Sudhi to the show.
Thank you, Dante and Sri, and for the whole team enabling this series. Greatly appreciate to talk about a topic that I'm passionate and I love. So thank you again. Looking forward to a very productive next few minutes.
Yes, Sudhi. One of the reasons we're excited about this conversation is that as a practitioner, you bring a unique perspective. You've seen the manufacturing problem from multiple sides. You've seen it from the automation vendor side from your days at Rockwell. Then you did almost 9 years at Wipro. So you've seen it from the systems integration perspective. Then, and the user side at Stanley Black Decker, I guess that's 8 years there, and the last 2 years as CA of Full Bore. So walk us through this very interesting journey that you've had.
Thank you. Yes. So actually, just to give you a little bit of an anecdote here, my background, my bachelor's is in electronics and telecommunication. And I came to the US many years ago to get a master's in computer science, like a lot of folks from my country. But actually, as part of my internship with IBM, I was actually given a desk at the factory automation lab that was run by GE. It was a brand new factory automation lab. So within about 1 month, the intrigue of everything around me got me. And I actually switched majors, and I actually switched majors for industrial engineering with a focus on robotics. So that's a little bit of how I got started. So right after...
It was quite the impression it made on you.
It certainly did. And by the way, I'm a third generation manufacturing professional, I would say. So starting with my great grandfather. So this runs in the family. And so anyway, I got started, and the first gig I got was really to be at a system integrator, small system integrator company in Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky. So I was actually doing hands-on systems, essentially for large companies like Ford, GE, Appliance, and on, Pillsbury. So a variety of industries. I was hands-on, application engineer, and then I quickly started managing projects for some of the larger programs that my company then won. So that's really how I got started. I'm very hands-on. I love the fact that you can see the impact. When you work in manufacturing, that's the beauty of it. Either you see it or you don't. There's no ambiguity. There is no, I would say, gray areas for the most part, right? So that's how I got started. And I'll pause there and see if you have any thoughts there, and I can continue on and tell you about, how I landed.
Yeah, one thing I picked up on was that you were fairly prescient in picking the right label. Labels come and go, buzzwords come and go, but you did pick smart manufacturing almost 10 years ago.
That is true. Right? That is true. Well before it was a fad, for sure, right? And so yeah, I really learned a lot with the system engineering expertise that I got from my first small company in Kentucky, and then at Rockwell. Just to Before I get to smart manufacturing, I just wanted to bring a little bit of context about Rockwell. So I joined the systems engineering group at Rockwell, and by the way, those days Rockwell was still a as big a leader as they are now, but the focus was high margin products, right? Like the PLCs, the IO modules, the motion control modules, and on and on. But really, their ability to bring solutions at a system level was lacking, and it posed a lot of issues for the customer. And Siemens was really gaining foothold in the U.S. because of that gap. So, long story short, I joined a brand new group, and I was managing all of the objects that created ControlLogix, which is still a massive platform in the globe. So that's how I got started. And then because I was so passionate about ControlLogix and my ability to communicate its power, I actually was sent to India as an expat to launch ControlLogix all of Asia Pacific, starting from New Zealand all the way to Japan. And so that was a phenomenal time because there was no launch infrastructure in India and other parts of the world, in that part of the world. And so I was able to train almost 400 to 450 engineers with all of our channel partners. I created the curriculum. So it was a phenomenal journey engaging with large customers there. And then when I came back, I then joined the design automation group because software was finally taking hold, and then especially on the engineering side. And this design automation group was in partnership with Ford and Chrysler, two competitors, and Rockwell in the middle. So I led the partnership, and we created a few powerful simulation and design automation solutions. And so that was really my background before I went to Wipro, to take this very combinational experience, if you will. On one hand, the ability to help create awesome system solutions, and then to be able to commercialize it and make sure that these first few major customers were successful, and then to bring that and also to now have led the design automation group on the automotive side. And it was pretty powerful then to bring that passion into Wipro and to create a brand new group called Smart Manufacturing.
So that's interesting. So at Wipro, over the almost 8+ years, you would have had a broad exposure to a lot of different
Yes.
industries, customers. What stands out?
What stands out with my uh, journey at Wipro? The first one actually was very interesting. It was a brand new group, and obviously I was employee one of that group, but I reported to the head of the president of the business unit, so which was a good thing. So I got all the air cover. So I was asked to see if I could make an impact in Europe. So there I was, trying to communicate my passion and the ability for me to build a team in Wipro for a Finnish client. And they were a major mining OEM, and they built all kinds of solutions that allowed them to help their customers in actually the testing of all the materials, etc., that would allow them to grade the quality of the ore that they were mining. So long story short, when I went there, had gone with my sales professionals and the team. They actually said, "How about you create a system drawing for how we want to now create a platform that would allow us to sell services?" Because they had all of these experts, double PhDs and the like, that flew all over the world. And then they're getting older, and they couldn't scale because it was limited to the about the 80 or 100 people that they had. So long story short, they said, "Why don't you create an architecture that will allow us to, you say you know the OT side, and you say you know the IT side, so why don't you create that?" And that was a surprise. But long story short, that's the same treatment they gave to all of the other people who had responded to the RFP. So luckily for me, we were able to make the cut, if you will, and that's how I got the first big opportunity in Finland. And then we built this platform, which was a pretty strong success in terms of the number of clients that they got out of it, and their goal was at that time to drive about $500 million of additional revenue. So it's powerful. And then that led us to other wins, both in Finland and the rest of the Europe. So that was certainly stood out, the way, customers there approach capabilities and how they scan for real depth in certain topics. So that certainly was something that I will always remember.
So it looks like there is a solution architecture DNA within you, right?
Probably.
And by that I mean more than just technology components as a solution, but also looking at the different dimensions of
Yes.
change, more holistic
Yeah.
type of approach, which is you don't find that today you find too many people sort of locked in a certain silo, a certain perspective, but bridging all those things, looking at it more holistically. So perhaps then, how did this evolve into the opportunity at Stanley Black Decker?
Yes, so to continue on the journey, so that's how I started actually. The corporation was called Autotech in Finland, and then it scaled to several other companies where we then started transforming. For example, in Philips, it was the other big, client that we had, where we won the larger SAP deal along with a few other suspects like Cognizant and Accenture and on and on. And so each one had to carve out our own swim lane, if you will, in how we not only delivered, but also the cool thing about that whole deal was each one of these massive competitors, we all had to innovate to show your mettle, even though we had won the deal. So it kept our innovation juices flowing. For example, one of the things we had to do was to create some new artifacts in MII, which is sort of the connection engine of SAP for most people who might know. So we actually created a few things that were so unique that it shaved a lot of manual work to connect, their factory systems. So we were able to then get into other parts of Philips, and our competition did similar things. So it was really exciting. So whether it was Philips, whether it was Corning, TE Connectivity, so there's several major deals, including at Whirlpool, where we talk of a great opportunity to create new capabilities. At Whirlpool, this was the first company, at least I knew after GE, that had a big vision in terms of being able to do mixed mode scheduling. In other words, if you look at all of the different white goods they make, they have several models, and for the most part, each one of these lines is built in separate factories, and they have dedicated lines. So the whole idea and notion is, if you can get really good at mixed mode scheduling, then you save a lot of cost, a lot of efficiency, inventory, the ability to hit your lead time. The benefits are innumerable. But boy, is it hard to make something like that work. So with that kind of a background, going back to your question about how did I land at Stanley Black Decker, so that really was what Stanley was looking for. They were looking for somebody who really knew, had the breadth as well as the depth in terms of some of these important technology areas. And that was one dimension of interest or requirement that they had. The other thing is they wanted somebody that really had a vision for how to leverage the technology that was there, and also anticipate some of the gaps that the technology had, so you could be a little more proactive in anticipating issues that could happen in the factories. And the third amazing thing that Stanley Black Decker has, and they had and they still do, is they believe that manufacturing is in their genes, which it is, but they also believe that it is in their true interest to promote manufacturing and share any and all IP and opportunities outside the four walls of Stanley Black Decker, as long as they're not competition. So they wanted to create this whole ecosystem that allowed the Industry 4.0 ecosystem that allowed me to fold outwards, me and my team to fold outwards and share for the larger community. So in fact, this was so energizing for me. I joined because of that, one of the main reasons. And a lot of my team members, they all joined for the same reason, because it was not just putting technology and buffing up the margins and driving competitive gains and all the good stuff that happens with Industry 4.0 and digital transformation. There's something larger. There was a larger purpose in terms of why Stanley Black Decker wanted to embark on this journey. So that's how I ended up getting this really, really cool and very significant in its impact kind of job. So it really brings back a lot of warm memories for me.
So is that a common thread then? Because when you look at smart manufacturing and companies who are successful at it, do you see that what they have in common is that dedication and commitment to seeing manufacturing as a core competency, as opposed to one of many things, functional things that in the supply chain?
That's a really good question, Sri, and it makes me think for sure. There are certainly a few other companies. I think I can think of P&G, for example. What a awesome global leader, right? And they've been at the forefront for decades now, always ahead of the curve. Same with other big industrial goods companies like Caterpillar, Cummins, etc. But I don't know. I don't know enough about their belief system to say that that's the case. But I surely would think so. That should be. If that is the case, then we really need that. Because going back to my other, one of the things that I do in my spare time is being part of the World Economic Forum. That energizes me. The ethos in World Economic Forum is care and share. If you care, you got to share, right? So, including Schneider, who's obviously sponsoring this important podcast, and Aviva, which is part of Schneider. This is an important cause, right? Because if you really care, how do you share? So this is manufacturing. It is a very it's a point of influx right now. I mean, it's really at the cusp of something great. I think personally, with the way the attention is in the U.S. and beyond. But we need companies like Schneider, Johnson and Johnson, Unilever, and on in P&G to participate and fold out like Stanley Black & Decker believes, right? So it's a very good question, and I hope it is the case that there's a fundamental belief that manufacturing is cool, not just a method to the madness to the end. So that's what I think.
Yeah, it's something I often wonder, because it's not necessarily that anyone sees manufacturing as less strategic, but some companies just choose to let somebody else do it for them.
I think it has. For example, I can think. I don't want to name names. It might be misconstrued, but there's some large companies who've chosen that manufacturing becomes untenable to thrive in this global world, right? And so it's okay for those companies, especially if you're in the high tech area or sector. It's really hard to compete, and the margins are razor thin. And so I can understand why you need some scale and get some contract manufacturers to help out. But if you're in true core industrial, I think it's so critical. And it's not just for the pride and the passion that most of us have in manufacturing, but I think it's a national cause, in my opinion. Whether it is the U.S. or whether it is any other country in the world, there's enough economic proof to show that you have to have a solid manufacturing base to protect your currency, to protect your people, and to promote healthy competition. So I strongly believe that the resurgence and the active dialogue that you see in the U.S. is a good thing.
No, it's actually quite encouraging, because just recently, right, with the World Economic Forum's focus on manufacturing, and then also from a local perspective, the work that you're doing with, is it the Connecticut
Center for Advanced Technology
Yeah,
and SESME, which is part of Department of Energy, which is
yeah.
Yeoman's Cause. So yeah, absolutely.
So let's dive in a little bit to this transformation that at Stanley Black and Decker. So we unpacked, a couple different things here as far as contract manufacturing versus choosing to kind of double down on your investment. So I kind of want to start from the beginning of that and then unpack what that actually meant, because what we talked about a little bit on this, goal to maybe outsource or insource, or this hesitance to scale up high skilled teams to help solve automation, software, technology problems in there. So when you were actually asked to take that job and take that position, did Stanley Black and Decker have a vision, or did you bring that vision in yourself?
Well, it was actually a combination of both. Okay, there at the leadership level, board level, the CEO and the CFO level, the goal was very clear. They wanted to transform the company at many levels. That included the product side, that included the go-to-market commercial side, and that included the ops and the supply chain, right? So it was really transformation across the company. And so the goal from the management standpoint, at least in operations, was to make sure that one, they retool their factories and enable their people to the next generation, to make sure that, for the next maybe few decades that they're ahead of the curve. And the other thing was, it was very clear for them that when you do this right, the financial gains in terms of productivity was there. They had done enough work with other consulting firms to validate that hypothesis, right? So to that end, the approximate aperture, if you will, of what we used to call as value capture. That includes, productivity. That includes potential revenue gains, and all of that. It includes a whole host of things. A fairly well thought through model, if you will, that defines value capture. So that's what the company's clarity came from. Is they knew it was in the range of something like that, and they said we know it's possible. Now it's your job as a leader of this program to now create the roadmap in terms of how we will actually build out the use cases, and equally important, or maybe more important, how do you build a team that will then communicate and bring ownership as well as buy-in from all of operations. So that really was my job, the second part of it, to make this possible.
So
The-
going back to that building the team aspect of that, were you taking people from inside the network? Did you look externally? Was it a combination of both? And what were the skill sets that you were looking that? Because like I think one of the things that you echoed and Sri and I shared this is this passion for manufacturing, and I think when people have passion, it makes it easy to then unleash technology into their hands and they do crazy things. So how did you like find that mix and find the right team members, and where did they come from?
Yes, great question. So it was a combination of both. So there were people that I hired that came from the outside, especially ones that had that streak in them where they had either created new technology or they had deployed technology in other companies. And I also like to pick people from adjacent industries, not just industrial goods, because you bring a new dimension to things, right? Even though it's manufacturing, how you do manufacturing in consumer goods is a whole different beast than how you do it in pharma, obviously, and somewhere in between. So I tried to pick people, my team, that came from the background of innovation and applying technology, but also they were passionate and had credibility in terms of rolling out the technology, making people believer of what's possible, right? So that's how I chose them. However, the ones that actually then supported the communication and the deployment of technology came from our own factories. So that was really important. Is they knew operations, and this was a great opportunity for them to get out of their comfort zone, not just be four walls of a factory or logistics or warehouse kind of environment, but now to rub shoulders with people who are really building cool technology was a big deal, right? So it was a nice thing for them to be part of this new venture and goal that the corporation had set. So that was how we actually created a team that was nicely enmeshed with what was already there as expertise within our operations.
Now, when you, I'm just going to go, I hear this a couple different times. When you bring people from external versus the people that have been there for years and years, sometimes there's a conflict in the way that we do this. We hear things like, you don't understand our business. Why are you bringing people in from outside? How did you deal with that conflict of internal versus this is the way we've always done it, and we're going to keep doing it, versus, hey, maybe there's some new innovation or different ways of working that we should explore?
Well, so that's a valid concern and it's real. Trust me, whatever you've heard is all real. So the way I looked at it is the people that were chosen to be part of my team were the few that really wanted to, as I said, get out of their comfort zone, learn something new, yet bring what the new in their own factories to bear, which is the confidence and the trust of all the people that worked in those factories, right? So it was not easy to find that talent. Some of them were younger, some of them older. So obviously, all male, female, and everything else. So it was a I would say, heterogeneous group, if you will. However, to the point you're making, it still meant, when these folks, by the way, some of those people that came from the factories, I created a role called plant champions, and I was alluding to that. I spoke with you both yesterday or day before, whenever it was. So these plant champions were the ones that really championed the cause of the plants. In other words, they were sort of the anointed one, if you will, that represented the plant, and they were the ones who would then go and help the deployment. But still, despite this thought process and thoughtfulness that we thought had put in, we still had people that felt that it was not, they were not well represented. But that was a minority, as opposed to if we didn't have this, it would have been harder. So something like a bridge is what we set up between the outside folks and as well as people who came from within. But it would have been worse if we didn't have that strategy.
For sure, that bridge seems like it's very important, and the resistance is going to be there. But did you see that resistance start to go away as you deployed technology? People started to see impacts to their business, impacts to the way that they did things. Like, did that start to soften, or did that resistance continue?
No, it definitely softened. In some cases, it's because they saw a lot higher of an impact in their own clients, and that itself is good enough. And in other cases, remember the people that they had chosen as someone who was part of what we call as the I4O team. Uh, they actually created assets not just for their clients; they created assets for, let's just say, the entire division that they represented. So there's a significant amount of pride that came with it, right? So it's not just your own plant that your colleague now is building things that's helping multiple plants, and it is cool, it's creative. So to that end, it was not just what these folks created in their own plant, but also something to give them an opportunity to say, hey, this is cool. Maybe I would also go like to do something like that. And the last part of it, this was the thought that we had that we would deploy, but we didn't get around to doing that. The third aspect of our strategy was creating this track between ops and technology with I4O was a cool thing, because now when you had new candidates come in, or even the ones that were already there in ops, they could actually come do a sabbatical, if you will, on the technology side and go back. And similarly, for example, the team that I had hired who came from operations, and I have seen this in my own life. So when you get put into a new role, whether you went from research or development to suddenly in ops, suddenly you start losing the edge that you had, because you're no longer close to whatever you're doing. And in my case, let's just say I'm no longer close to the customers. While I was at Rockwell, you have to go back to the field to get your juices flowing again to see what's current. So to that end, if we can establish a thoughtful structure in this technology team, and I know Schneider themselves are doing a lot of things in this area. I don't know if they already have this strategy or not. It would be powerful to have a meaningful structure where you actually have people move in and out and everybody wins. And it can be a big differentiation to hire talent. I think it'll be exciting for people to know that, and we certainly used it as a great way to hire people. On that note, I'll tell you, this was very stark. When I started the team sometime, the whole program, it was in 18, it was really hard to get talent. If you remember, that's when I-4O was just taking off. It was really, and I started seeing that even at Wipro, but I was blown away, and especially, and a lot of the team were based out of Hartford, Connecticut, and it's just a hard place for people to move to, right? Because it's just not where the action is for manufacturing, unfortunately. But it's changing now. But back in 18, it was a very different story. But long story short, what I came to realize was, in fact, we had literally no trouble hiring talent because of the story that we had about what the purpose of this whole transformation was, the ability to create impact across the globe for SBD, but beyond. So it was really energizing to see that at work, because most people saw this. We all want to do something which is bigger than just do your day-to-day job. But if you can do that and achieve something bigger for the industry, it's powerful, right? And so I just wanted to point that out.
So let's drill down into this, this animating purpose, because it comes down to value, right? Creating value for the business.
Yes.
And we touched upon this on our earlier conversation, but let's try to unpack this. This idea that if there is a value roadmap, there's a value journey, and there's an element of value delivered in sprints very quickly, to satisfy the expectations of the leadership who's sponsoring the change. But there's also a marathon element to it,
Yes.
that you have to have some kind of an end state vision of what smart manufacturing looks like for your business, because there's very few things that you can actually get there overnight, right? You got to put in the places, you got to build the foundation. So what are your thoughts on that? Because I think it's some of this also has to do with your current venture in full bore,
Yes.
in trying to create value quickly.
Yes. It's a great point. So the way also Dante's question about, so how did we really create this value capture that I talked about, right? So needless to say, like everybody else, we had to come up with the right use cases to go after that, right? That numbers, both tangible and intangible. The tangible part, while it was a large number, we were able to do. But the intangible part is, how do you now create new career pathways? How do you get people excited on the factory floor? Much, much, much harder, right? So there's always a a dual state mode, if you will, of that whole operations that I led at SBD. So the first dimension was this. So when you had all of these use cases, the first thing I wanted to do was to create this dual mode where you said, I used to call it spot automation, right? And then, so this is basically being able to automate, be processes, or be able to do the hard, factory automation kind of projects with robotics and cobotics. So that fell in one category. But then in parallel, we also had line of sight for at least 3 or 4 breakthrough innovation cases. Okay. So upfront, we spent almost about 3 to 4 months firming up how this app, canvas looked like, the spot automation as well as breakthrough innovation. So for the spot automation, around 1819, if you remember, the thing that was really picking up was cobots, right? Machine tending was a fantastic use case. Dirty, dull, dangerous. I'm sure you heard of that phraseology, if you will. And so we wanted to go after that. And the beauty was it addressed another requirement, which is, how do you show something tangible that you can touch and feel as impact, both for this financial CFO organization that I reported to. By the way, I reported to the CFO and the president of the company by design, right? So that was uniquely structured. So something that the CFO can actually track was very important. By the same token, we wanted the factory floor folks to be able to touch it. So Cobot was fantastic. Cobot, the general application of cobots was very powerful because what we did was we created sort of the template, if you will, of us from in the technology team, how we would actually identify the right players with the right credibility and the hunger to be part of our transformation team. I'm talking about the vendors, right, and the partners. And then so once we did that, we then allowed our plant champions, as I mentioned, to engage with the plants to identify the use cases that would be candidate for us to deploy cobots. So all of that again had this common 3-month goal, right? And so we were able to very quickly. We started in one plant, and we were able to very quickly uh, make this plant champion get the plant champion to help us very meaningfully. And we had some great partners who helped us to create the design, the ability to integrate it to other assets if need be, the integration code base, and a whole host of things. So that was a big success for us, is being able to hit the ground running with cobot use cases. And on the software side of things, or the process automation side, we went after paperless, right? We looked at there's so many paperless opportunities. So being able to bring paperless use cases into most of our factories was also fairly straightforward. And then to bring some energy to innovation, again, all of it in the spot automation side, the partners that supported me, the large IT players, we had selected three of those big companies. So the reason was, we balanced out again the cost point as well as the capabilities they brought. So you had a really rich, vibrant set of IT companies and system integration companies, along with my own team, which was made up of operational folks, as well as those who came from the outside. So that really was the makeup of the team. And now, one last point I want to make is on the breakthrough automation side, one of the things that was very clear and apparent was for us in the technology team was the breakthrough had to be in the case of build where we sell strategy, right? So that always has been the case of Stanley Black and Decker, especially over the last, I would say, 8 to 10 years. That has been the transformation that the leadership team had taken as a stance. So what we did was on the breakthrough side, we said that we will now go after a flexible automation platform that would allow us to build platforms that would not just handle 2 or 3 SKUs or 4 SKUs, which the company did really well. Stanley Black and Decker had a fantastic automation program. So when they had new products coming out in the power tools and other tools division, they were very easily, they were quite capable of putting out these automation platforms that were kind of geared towards these new SKUs. But the problem was because it was such a high growth company and they're coming back to that mode now, what would happen is every 2 3 years those automation demands were very different, so they continuously had to chase after new automation projects. So what we actually developed in partnership with several automation companies, big and small, and this was mind-blowing to me, is where we had competitors work together with us to create a flexible automation platform which was software driven, vision driven, AI driven, was wild. So we actually spent about a year and a half coming up with the right design, and then we had a startup out of California that actually then the folks from that startup came from Flextronics and like, right, in the contract manufacturing uh, segment. So long story short, they actually helped create our flexible automation platform. And so we actually then proved this flexible automation platform in Charlotte, and you will see articles in Wall Street Journal to that effect, where we were able to address 14 different families of product SKUs, which is mind blowing. And between that and some of the things we did with the way we managed tariffs, etc., so we were able to actually clearly say that we will be able to reshore jobs from Mexico into Charlotte which was a big milestone, not just again for SPD, but as I said, for the whole industry, right? So that was one, and I'll just pause after this. The bigger, equally important milestone we were able to accomplish was on the software side. We built a platform that would hunt for margin leakages constantly across the entire enterprise. And then it would seek these margin leakages and then basically table it up just to be a candidate for operational improvements that every company delivers, right? Every year you have to deliver anywhere from 4 to 20% of productivity improvements on a year by year basis. So this platform not only hunted, but then it was able to resolve those opportunities. Some of it they could, some of it could not, automatically with workflows and so on, and share it across the entire enterprise. So if you saw a great opportunity in certain process like non-conformance, we would know exactly which other plant, with non-conformance building of the same type of SKUs would be notified. Hey, here is something we found out. Here is the role that will need to implement this or explore this. And so all of that was automated. So that was very powerful. So in all, just to summarize, so these were the two big modes that we actually basically compiled all our use cases, categorized it in these two modes, and that's how we were able to execute.
Oh, I love that idea of automating the workflows. I think that's overlooked, right? Everybody wants to create, dashboards, visions, something, but then it's okay, what do you do with the information, right? So that automation of workflow to increase agility across the organization and kind of like leverage that collective manufacturing footprint is pretty neat. I also think it's very interesting the structure there, right? Reporting to the CFO. So having to, instead of just getting like a budget, it seems like your use case definition had to be anchored in that the what, the why, the
Absolutely.
ROI, right? So you're in a different little ball camp. So I kind of like hearing how you parse that out to say, okay, here are the things that we know we're going to get wins on. So we have our quick wins, our low hanging fruit that we're going to do with automation and cobots, but we're also going to take some of that savings and be able to see if we can get some of these bigger ambitions that might not return as much because of the R&D effort up front, but when they do, they're going to hit big. So I love to see that the dynamices of that structure. But I'm a little sympathetic for what you had to go for reporting to a CFO.
But I agree with you. And that's what, by the way, I forgot to mention that, Steve, when you asked that question, I always wanted to work for a CFO. You know why? Especially in Wipro, while I was there, you would always be able to, with your own creativity and your passion, whether it's me or my teams, right? We were able to get into a brand new account and prove what we can do. But it would always be a local story, right? But if you have to make it a global story in any company, you have to go to the CFO. Only the CFO would be able to, obviously, that's what makes sense. So one of the things I wanted to do was work for a CFO just to bring the rigors of financial uh, dimension to how you define value, right? I mean, we all say value, but there's a method to the madness. A CFO has to be precise in any company because that's the only way they survive. That's the only way companies, survives. So one of my goals was to work for a CFO, and that's another thing that happened with this role. And so that's why I took it. I forgot to mention that when you first asked me.
No.
So I'm picking up on an interesting, let's say, creative tension in the sense that, look, it has to, okay, the CFO keeps it real, keeps it grounded, keeps it pragmatic.
Yeah.
But when I look at the companies that are doing cool things, it is not necessarily grounded just on margin leaks and efficiency. It's really innovation. That's what gets people excited. That's what
Yes.
fires up people. But you don't
Right.
necessarily, associate a CFO with innovation,
That's right.
right?
And that's what made Stanley Black and Decker so special, right? It was the CEO and the CFO. They both were, they were thinking so far ahead of the industry. And so that's why this story was not just limited to, putting the best predictive maintenance. pedestrian, right? Because yes, any company will do it. It takes a little bit of rigor, etc. But so you need that breakthrough innovation track churning and driving real impact. So I think that's what set it apart. And by the way, Dante, to your question, other thing that I forgot, when we actually created these use cases, whether it was the cobot or whether it was some of the other things we did on paperless, our template was also just like we would present to the CFO, right? On one hand, you had all of the process benefits, the people who would benefit, etc. As part of that narrative, for the plant manager and the director of operations, we would clearly say, this is the ROI, this is the payback, because they have their budget as well, right? So it was really, I wish more and more companies can start putting that people dimension as well as financial dimension in the middle, and maybe an industry dimension to the point you're making, Sri. Okay, how can it help? Because where we are in manufacturing, we have to fold out and help what I call as community value, right? So if there are things that can help community value, whether it is in your state or whether it is in your industry, we should do it. That's the only way we can scale. We can't keep recreating things over and over again, which in fact leads to the ethos and the philosophy and the foundation of Sesame. The whole idea of the smart manufacturing innovation platform is, why do you have to recreate things, especially when it comes to data acquisition, contextualization, which takes so much time and effort, right? Because it takes, regardless of how automated it is, it still takes effort. So the platform, what it does is, if you're trying to solve a certain problem for a certain industry, that contextualization is baked in. So now if you want to care and share that contextualization, the platform allows you to do it. So so that's why I think it's a very important thing to talk about in terms of where the industry needs to go. It needs to start thinking about smarter way to not just help you as Stanley Black Decker or Procter and Gamble or Lockheed Martin in a very different industry. How do you now have your long supply chain, all of your SMEs that make up your supply chain? There are companies that are 40 people who are that make up these companies. They're part of the larger supply chain of these global corporations. So you have to start thinking about them.
Yeah, coming back to the topic of innovation, I think it's so important because this shift in mindset, compared to, let's say go back 10, 20 years, cost of manufacturing rolls up under cost of goods sold. That cost mindset, everybody gets beat up, right? And sometimes I feel like there's no faster way to suck the soul out of manufacturing than just to have a purely cost mindset.
True, true.
But going back, because I think what you're saying is reframing this to bring excitement back in innovation. That's the kind of stuff that gets people excited, because the world of opportunity is so much bigger when you frame it that way.
Totally. And it's almost, if you don't do it, it's hard for you to survive as a company, whether you're a large company or even a small company, Sri. Because I'm now working with a lot of small companies in many ways. And even for small companies, if all you're doing is clunky things and which still keeps your shop running, that's not good enough for the newer generation, right? You got to have something that they can at least understand and they're used to in their day-to-day life. You can't have them do something that is so alien to them, and so they'll be bored out of the skull, right? And so to me, it is self-preservance for any company of any size, for you to start bringing that focus on real value. And then when you do that, then the benefits, because now you'll have a workforce that's agile, you can create new career pathways. Even if you don't have a college degree, you'll still be able to really leverage them, get their mind engaged as opposed to just grunt work, right? So to me, it's really important for you to think that way. If not, then it'll be hard for you to survive, especially with a labor crisis. My goodness, I think I saw in one of the shows where in that I saw I don't know where I saw, but long story short, it was almost about 50 or 60 people that this person interviewed. The first critical need to have is labor. We just don't have talent, whether it is engineering talent, manufacturing talent. In manufacturing, it's hard. So the only way to address that is this automation of an optimization of processes. It's literally, it's not just low hanging fruit. It's actually apples on the ground like this. That you have to walk around it. There's so many opportunities to go after these processes, automate them, and then bring more intelligence back into your organization to you then optimize it. So it's a dual benefit. You automate it first, then you optimize it, because now it's digitized, right? Which is how business systems work. So why not manufacturing?
Yeah, so I want to dig into that one a little bit too. So you had mentioned something with like small mid-sized companies. Obviously, Schneider Electric's a massive companies. We have large central function teams, lots of innovation within the manufacturing side, and we make products too. So it's kind of easy for our supply chain to know what's out there. Well, I wouldn't say easy, but sometimes they get told what we have going on. But I want to talk about the small mid-sized businesses because that labor gap is huge, and a lot of these smaller companies have these, and we have a lot of this too, right? We have people in manufacturing sites for 20, 30, 40 years, but they're starting to go. So we invested in new technology. Younger generations come in, they have the information to do their job in the palm of their hand, right? That's part of what we focused on from a transformation story. But I don't see the same sophistication in some of the smaller to mid-size companies, mainly because one, they're still kind of holding on to this aging workforce, and two, they really don't have the infrastructure to support some sort of innovation. So, in your experience, as a small mid-sized business company out there, how do you limit the time to value? How do you stand something up quick and start making those investments, knowing that you might not have the skills and resources or be able to bring them on quickly?
Very good question. So let me think through a very compact way of answering that. So, number one, if you look at where technology has evolved, right? So, there's some technologies that have evolved faster, and not only has it evolved faster, the kind of impacts that you can extract out of it is also significant. So, if you go back 2 3 years ago, it was predictive maintenance, right? It still is. It was really hard for you to have enough data to do anything meaningful to improve your return on assets through asset uptime with predictive diagnostics. When was it? About 5 6 years ago. Not anymore, right? Because there are a lot of exchanges that sell motor data. They sell all of the bearing information, so it's public. You pay for it,
Mhm.
and if you're having the same motor, you get it, and within weeks or a month, you suddenly have a predictive analytics use case running. So Dante, that's the first answer. So the accessibility to data and proven use cases like predictive maintenance is a wonderful thing. Now, the second thing that has evolved rapidly over the last year and a half is Vision.ai. It's mind blowing, right? Because one of the cost points, so it does a couple of things. One of the cost points that you see and the huge friction and time delays and lags, etc., in any new project is sensorizing assets.
Mhm.
Continues to be a pain in the right? It is clunky. You might have to deal with unions, and it's not cheap because somebody has to come in, scope it, somebody has to deploy it, blah blah blah. So the list goes on and on. So now with Vision, for the most part, you will be able to extract data, especially of processes, very easily. Okay, in less than few weeks is now that you'll be able to actually get data from your processes using Vision. And I'm not saying you don't need sensors, but the amount of sensors that you'll need is far less than what you would if you have to just um, use
So at
only
least
them.
a good place to start.
That's a great place to start. And here is another thing. It also allows you uh, to now pick up processes that it's almost impossible to put sensors on because you'll need a specialized mechanical engineering group, tool and fixture. It takes time. Remember, it's a dual problem. It's not just the cost of the material itself, the cost of time. in my opinion, all of these transformation journeys, it's a very finite amount of time before you show value to not just your CFO and your operational leader, but also your own team on the factory floor, right? So if you're there for 4 months and you still haven't done anything, they start losing interest. 3 months is that magical number. So where I'm going is the ability for you to now quickly censor up, for the most part, with vision. Then not only will you be able to start showing results, but you'll also be able to show things that are not easily censorable. Even those can become candidates. So uh, your funnel, if you will, of projects that are tangible becomes a lot more. Okay. So now with vision, the other thing that it does is it's very flexible to add new events, right? So you have a data stream coming from your camera. So now you can program, let's just say, 8 events of interest to you, right? Events are nothing but data, that it's an analog or discrete, right? So, but however, now you suddenly change your process or you want to add more things. It's as simple as redoing your learning just for those new events that you want to add. So different compared to what it would be if you have hard sensors. So for all of those reasons, right, Vision.ai is becoming very powerful in being able to put a use case together, to demonstrate it, and plus, most important now, it's not like how it was 6, 7 years ago, or again, where you had all kinds of concerns and issues with regards to putting cameras in a factory. It's still there are guardrails, of course, and there should be. But the fact of the matter is, everybody is used to cameras everywhere. Whether you're walking on a street, whether you're in an office, you're in a building, driving, you know it, right? So uh, the acceptability level has gone up significantly. So I think to answer your question again, Dante, is to use some of these technologies, being able to quickly put this together and win the confidence of your team is a lot more attractive than where it was before.
Yeah, I agree with that one. I'm starting to see a lot of uptick in vision. It seems to be a place where, like you said, CCTV is everywhere. So you're very data rich on that, but it's okay. What am I using for that? Just to see access control if somebody's into a building? No, I can build a lot of use cases off of that. So I happen to definitely agree with the AI vision. I think it's a great place to start. I mean, you have a camera out there. Almost every pixel is a sensor, right? Try building that infrastructure up with other things and trying to do it in different ways. Just not you know time to value is much quicker.
Yeah, totally. And I think it just adds to the flexibility and also the some of the things that go back to my dull, dirty, dangerous kind of operations. Some of them you don't want to even have people working on these types of operations. So you can have vision to actually pick up on some of those things that people do and then communicate via vision. So it's pretty powerful how creative you can get. For example, I'll give you a simple one. This is not again in the dirty category, but dull and mundane, right? Who the heck wants to enter reason causes into your SCADA system and your IoT apps? We all, unfortunately, after 25 years, we still want people to go put in those reason causes, and we know that most of them are in the other category, right? Because they don't want to type in. So to me, one of the most critical use cases is to use AI, and luckily there are no new solutions that allow you to use AI and predict what reason cause it is, so it automatically enters it. So you just validate it. But vision is easier, smarter, because if you, for example, we use the concept of a game wheel, and you have like 16 slots, and you say waiting for material, all you have to do is turn the knob to waiting for material. The camera picks it up, and then it sends a signal to your material handler, right? So it's a smarter way of interacting, is what vision can do, if you can think of creative ways to integrate it with, right, to your people. It certainly is very attractive. So those are some ways where you not only are satisfying the financial aspects, but you're also satisfying the people in terms of being able to show use cases where you see new career paths for them, right? Because now the people you're displacing with some of these things, if you have a thoughtfully, created career roadmap, then it's a powerful thing. I'll give you an example. I use constantly is if you're an operator or a material handler or spider, you're always looking at things, you're inspecting, you're doing your job, but you hardly do any quality control, right? But now with vision, for example, you can actually do some of the quality control functions in addition to what you're doing. So if your career roadmap accommodated that kind of a shift, so you get not only paid more, but you bring a certain level of pride that you're doing two things in addition to just one, right? So but it has to be thoughtfully, and structured in terms of how you look at not just training people, but also creating new roadmaps.
Yeah, I like that, creating roadmaps, and I mean the labor force is going to change, right? So if we can upskill to then maintain and be more digital as opposed to the analog worker, that's the future of manufacturing, right? The goal of none of this is to replace it; it's to create agility, right? To create leverage in the workflow, help people do more with technology, and that's ultimately what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and in the example that I was mentioning, we use a vision-based system, very simple, and in fact, we have a testimonial on our website that shows it, and where the general manager says the best part about it, he says, is that they were able to, meaning full bore, was able to double the productivity in less than 3 months, right? And they would work weekend shifts. They stop. They're now doing 2 shifts instead of 3. So the benefits are numerous. And of course, you can always argue that it was a user, a simple use case, whatever. But you start somewhere, right? I'm not saying every process you can double productivity. That would be outstanding. I'm sure that's not the case, but that's just to get started.
Yeah, and I see the value is usually higher when the maturity is low.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yep.
All right. Well, this has been so far a great conversation, Sudhi. We definitely appreciate all your wisdom. So, do you want to spend, I guess, at wrap up here, a few minutes just talking about what you're doing now and where people can find you, learn a little bit more?
Given my work in Connecticut, helping the Connecticut ecosystem as part of Stanley Black Decker in my past life, I now am doing this full time. And that's what we at Full Bore, along with Sesame and CCAT, we're doing, is to show the art of the practical and the possible at the same time. So at Full Bore, the only thing I'm looking for is going back to the Spot automation case that I was talking to at Stanley Black Decker. We're trying to build that for small to medium manufacturing companies. And then equally important, it's not just a few customers we'll engage at Full Bore to help them, but also to broadcast, to spread the message of what's possible, to collaborate and bring new technologies in, right? So that really has been my mission for the last 2 years. I'm surrounded by great partners, whether it's at the organization level, like talked about, or my own partners within my company and the people that I worked as peers. So it's a kindred group for sure, right? We are growing, but it's not the massive talent that's addressing the bigger companies. By the way, manufacturing is 98.4% of manufacturing is driven by small to medium businesses. The rest are big companies, but however, obviously, the converse is true. The maximum amount of attention and love goes towards the bigger companies. So that really is the endeavor I'm on. And so the name of the company is Full Bore, full-bore.com, and it'd be great if you can take a look at it. And if we can be of any help, that'd be great. Or a lot of the folks who might be with large companies, as I mentioned, you have a supply chain, I'm sure, that has smaller companies. Just to help connect the dots would be awesome, and we would appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time today. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this episode of the Practitioners Unplugged podcast. We hope you found these stories and insight as inspiring and as informative as we did. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with your network. Until next time, keep innovating and keep transforming.
Thank you so much. Enjoyed it.